Your phone runs one, your laptop runs one, that weird smart fridge your neighbor won't stop bragging about runs one too. Operating systems are the most important software you never think about. There are way more of them than you'd guess. Some are free, some cost hundreds of dollars, and nearly all of them trace back to the same place. Let's break every single one down. Unix. Most people have never touched Unix directly, but almost every OS you've ever used owes it rent money. It was born in 1969 at Bell Labs. Two researchers built it because they wanted a better way to run programs. It's a text-based, multi-user operating system. No fancy graphics. No mouse, just a blinking cursor and raw power. Think of it like the original recipe that every restaurant in town eventually copied. What Unix actually does is manage processes, handle files, and let multiple people share one computer simultaneously. It introduced the idea of small tools that each do one thing well. Chain them together and you can build almost anything. The spec that matters here isn't speed or memory, it's the philosophy. Everything is a file. Programs talk to each other through plain text. That simplicity is why it's scaled from room-sized mainframes to the phone in your pocket. You wouldn't install Unix today, but you're already running its DNA. macOS is literally Unix certified. Linux is Unix-like. Android sits on a Linux kernel. The myth is that Unix is ancient history. It's not dead. It just evolved into everything else. MS-DOS. If you're under 25, you've probably never seen this thing. If you're over 35, you've got war stories. MS-DOS was Microsoft's first major operating system. It launched in 1981 and powered the original IBM PC. No Windows, no icons, no mouse support. Just a black screen with a blinking C prompt. What it actually did was shockingly basic by today's standards. It loaded programs, managed files, and talked to your hardware. That was the whole job. It was like a bouncer at a nightclub. It didn't do anything fun itself. It just decided what got through the door. You typed commands for everything. Want to open a file? Type it out. Want to delete something? Better spell it right. The spec that defined MS-DOS was memory. It could only address 640 kilobytes of RAM. Bill Gates allegedly said that should be enough for anybody. For perspective, one photo on your phone today is bigger than that entire limit. Nobody would pick MS-DOS for anything modern. But in the 1980s, it was the only real option for personal computers. It made Microsoft a household name and set the stage for everything that came next. The big misconception is that MS-DOS simply vanished. It didn't fully disappear until Windows XP arrived in 2001. That's a 20-year run. Put some respect on it. Windows. Everyone knows Windows. It's the OS your school computer ran, your office still uses, and your grandma calls you about when something breaks. Windows is the most widely used desktop operating system on the planet. It holds roughly 72% of the desktop market. That's not a lead. That's a monopoly wearing casual clothes. What Windows actually does is give you a graphical way to interact with your hardware. Files, folders, a taskbar, a start menu. It manages your apps, handles your drivers, and tries very hard not to blue screen. Think of it like the manager at a busy restaurant. It doesn't cook the food, it makes sure everything gets to the right table at the right time. The specs that matter are your edition and version number. Windows 11 requires a TPM 2.0 chip, 4 gigs of RAM, and 64 gigs of storage minimum. Home Edition covers the basics. Pro adds encryption and remote desktop. For most people, Windows is the default answer. Gamers pick it because that's where the games live. Businesses pick it because that's where the software lives. It's rarely the absolute best at any one thing. It's just compatible with everything. The myth is that Windows is bloated garbage. Modern Windows is actually pretty solid. The real bloat comes from manufacturers loading it with junk before you even open the box. macOS. This is what happens when one company controls the hardware and the software. Apple builds the Mac. Apple builds macOS. That tight marriage is the entire selling point. It's a Unix-based desktop operating system that officially only runs on Apple hardware. What macOS does is the same basic job as Windows. Manage files, run apps, Talk to your hardware. The difference is how it feels doing it. Everything is smoother, more polished, more opinionated. It's like flying business class. You're going to the same destination, you just get a nicer seat and a warmer towel. The spec that matters most here is ecosystem. macOS works seamlessly with iPhones, iPads, AirPods, and Apple Watch. AirDrop, handoff, universal clipboard. If you're deep in the Apple world, it all feels like one connected system. If you're not, it feels like a walled garden with a very expensive fence. You'd choose macOS for creative work, software development, or if you value polish over tinkering. It's massive in music production, video editing, and design. Less so in gaming. That's still Windows territory, and probably will be for a while. The common mistake is thinking Macs don't get malware. They absolutely do. They're just targeted less often, because fewer people use them. That's security through obscurity, not superiority. Linux. This is the OS that tech people will not stop telling you about. It's free, it's open source, and it runs on basically anything with a power button. Linus Torvalds built the kernel in 1991 as a college side project. That side project now powers most of the internet servers, every single one of the world's top 500 supercomputers, and every Android phone on Earth. What Linux does is the same thing every OS does. Manage hardware, run software, handle files. The twist is that it comes in hundreds of different flavors called distributions. Ubuntu, Fedora, Arch, Mint, Debian. It's like ice cream. Same base concept, wildly different experience, depending on which scoop you grab. The key spec is your distro choice. Ubuntu is beginner-friendly and well-supported. Fedora stays on the cutting edge. Arch is for people who genuinely enjoy doing things the hard way and then telling everyone about it. What actually matters day to day is the desktop environment and package manager. Those determine how your system looks and how you install stuff. You'd choose Linux for total control, maximum privacy, or running a server. It's also incredible for reviving old hardware, that dusty laptop from 2013 that Windows abandoned. Linux will bring it back to life. The myth is that Linux is only for programmers and hackers. If you've tried a modern distro like Mint, drop your experience in the comments. It's genuinely easier than people expect. Android. Android is technically Linux in a phone costume. Google took the Linux kernel, built a mobile framework on top, and shipped it to every phone manufacturer willing to say yes. That turned out to be almost all of them. Android runs on roughly 71% of smartphones worldwide. That's over 3 billion active devices walking around in people's pockets. What Android does is run your phone. Apps, notifications, calls, camera, GPS, everything. It's the middleman between your finger-tapping glass and the hardware doing real work. Think of it like a translator at a conference. You speak human, your phone speaks electricity. Android makes sure both sides understand each other. The specs that matter are your Android version and your security patch date. Newer versions bring better battery management, tighter privacy controls, and more features. But here's the frustrating part. Updates depend on your phone manufacturer, not Google directly. So your phone might sit on an old version for years while Google has already moved on. It's like ordering food and the restaurant deciding when you're allowed to eat it. You'd pick Android for choice and flexibility. Budget phones, flagships, foldables, tablets. Android covers every price point. The misconception is that Android is less secure than iOS. It's not inherently weaker. It's just more open, and openness means more room for user mistakes. iOS. This is Apple's mobile operating system. It runs on iPhones and only iPhones. One company, one phone line, one OS. Apple controls every single pixel. What iOS actually does is the same job as Android. Run apps, manage notifications, handle your camera and calls. The difference is philosophy. Apple decides what you can and can't do with your own phone. Less customization, more consistency across the board. It's like living in a gorgeous apartment with an extremely strict HOA. Beautiful place. Don't even think about changing the curtains. The spec that matters most is the software support timeline. Apple typically supports iPhones with major updates for 5 to 6 years. sometimes even longer. That means a phone you bought years ago is still getting new features today. Compare that to most Android devices, which get 2 to 3 years of updates if you're lucky. You'd pick iOS for simplicity, long-term support, or if you're already deep in Apple's ecosystem, iMessage alone keeps millions of people from switching. Never underestimate the power of the blue bubble. The myth is that iOS is completely locked down and you can't customize anything. That was more true 5 years ago. Recent versions added widgets, default app switching, and sideloading options in some regions. Apple is loosening its grip. Slowly. Very, very slowly. Chrome OS. This is what happens when Google asks one bold question. What if your entire computer was just a web browser? Chrome OS is a lightweight, Linux-based operating system designed entirely around the Chrome browser. It powers Chromebooks, those affordable laptops that schools hand out like Halloween candy. What Chrome OS does is run web apps and Android apps. That's essentially the whole pitch. Your files live in Google Drive, your work happens in the browser. It's like a thin client from the 1990s that got a modern haircut and decent Wi-Fi. The spec that matters most is your internet connection. Chrome OS leans heavily on cloud services. No Wi-Fi means limited functionality. It typically ships with 4 gigs of RAM and 32 or 64 gigs of storage. That sounds tiny because it is. Everything important lives online. You'd pick Chrome OS for basic everyday computing. Web browsing, email, YouTube, Google Docs, light schoolwork. If that covers your entire digital life, a Chromebook under $300 handles it beautifully. If you need Photoshop or serious gaming, this is not your platform. The misconception is that Chromebooks are completely useless offline. They're not. Google Docs, select Android apps, and media playback all work without internet. Chromebooks are just significantly better with it. FreeBSD. This is the operating system nobody talks about, but everyone secretly uses. You've almost certainly never installed it yourself. You've definitely used something running on it. Netflix streams billions of hours of video using FreeBSD servers. Sony built the PlayStation's operating system on top of it. It's the quiet kid in class who turns out to be running 3 successful businesses. What FreeBSD does is handle networking and server workloads with brutal efficiency. It's a full open-source Unix operating system, not Linux. An actual direct descendant of the original Berkeley software distribution from the 1970s. It manages memory, processes, and network connections with a laser focus on stability and performance. The key specs are its networking stack and its software license. FreeBSD's TCP/IP implementation is legendary among server administrators. It handles massive traffic loads without flinching. Its BSD license is also more permissive than Linux's GPL. Companies can take the code, modify it, and ship it in commercial products without sharing their changes. That's exactly why Apple and Sony both built on top of it. You'd pick FreeBSD for a server, a firewall, or a dedicated network appliance. Not for your daily desktop. That would be like hiring a Formula One pit crew to change your bicycle tire. The myth is that FreeBSD is just another Linux distribution. It's not Linux at all. Different kernel, different history, different design philosophy entirely. SteamOS. This is Valve's answer to a question nobody asked out loud, but every gamer thought quietly. What if PC games ran without Windows? SteamOS is a Linux-based operating system built specifically for gaming. It powers the Steam Deck, Valve's handheld gaming PC that somehow runs most of your Steam library on a device the size of a large sandwich. What SteamOS does is run PC games using a compatibility layer called Proton. Proton translates Windows game calls into something Linux understands in real time. It's like having a fluent interpreter whispering into Linux's ear every time a game tries to speak Windows. The key spec is Proton compatibility. Not every Windows game works flawlessly yet. Most major titles do. Some anti-cheat systems still cause problems. Valve maintains a public compatibility database with verified and playable ratings. Those ratings are your best friend before buying. You'd choose SteamOS if you want a console-like gaming experience from PC hardware. The Steam Deck ships with it pre-installed. Some enthusiasts are putting it on other PCs too. It boots fast, stays focused, and gets completely out of your way. If you've got a Steam Deck, tell me your most played game in the comments. The misconception is that gaming on Linux is a broken mess. SteamOS proved otherwise. It's not perfect, it's not universal, but it works way better than almost anyone predicted. So that's the full tour. From Unix's blinking cursor in 1969 to SteamOS running AAA games on a handheld you can throw in a backpack. Operating systems went from typed commands in a dark room to invisible layers running your phone, your TV, your car, and probably your toaster. They look wildly different from each other, but every single one does the same fundamental job: make hardware actually useful for humans. What's the one operating system you personally couldn't live without? Drop your answer in the comments. If this video helped you understand what's actually running your devices, smash that like button. It genuinely helps the channel more than you'd think. Next up, I'm breaking down every type of computer memory: RAM, cache, VRAM, storage, all of it, and why they're not the same thing. Click the video on screen right now.